Hey guys, welcome back to Thorough Capping. It's Dave. I'm coming at you with a video that's a bit off of the beaten path, and I think a lot of you, if not all of you, find it somewhat interesting, a bit intriguing. Some of you may question it. Before I even go into it, I want to just let you guys know that this is not a standalone method. I mean, it possibly could be if it's brushed up a little bit, but I mean, it's showing some really, really good. Good signs right now up to this point. I tested it out this past week. I tested it out with about 15 races today between Woodbine, Laurel, and Tampa Bay. And I don't know if it was just a good day. I know you can roll dice or throw darts and have a good day. But if I didn't have a good day with it, I wouldn't be making this video right now. And one of the main reasons I'm making it is really for anybody who has ideas on how to supplement what we already do with this, piggyback on what we do now with this, or how to tweak this a little bit so you can make it a standalone system. Now, first of all, I got to tell you that you could do these races using this method in about 5-6 minutes. All right. So that might open. If that doesn't open your eyes, then I don't know what does, because everything we've touched on so far with the thorough capping factors takes a little bit of time to do. All right, because a lot of it's, you're doing the mental calculations and then you're adding into the grid. So what I call this the EP points method, and the EP stands for early pace. And I'm sure you guys all know, when you look into, if you use Brisnet past performances, and if you use DRF and you don't use Brisnet, you're gonna love this, because you don't need the running style and the clearing points anymore. Okay, what this does is, this is your own way of factoring what you believe is the horse's running style, along with the clearing points. Just to school you a little bit, clearing points are determine what the horse's propensity to go to be, where that horse is usually at the first call. Okay, the higher the number with the clearing points, the better chance that the horse is going to be in the lead at the first call. The lower the number, the less of a chance. Well, what we're doing here, if you take a look at this, I have Woodbine for tomorrow, and I have Woodbine race number 1. And I'm going to show you my charts in a second. But what we're doing here is we're looking for races that are similar to today's distance. Okay, it doesn't have to be. It's almost impossible to find 3 races recent that are exactly at today's distance anywhere. So we're going by sprints and routes. Okay, if it's a sprint race, we're looking for sprints. If it's a route race, we're looking for routes, if we can find them. Ideally, we're looking for the top, or we're looking for 3 races that are somewhat recent. And what we're doing is we're identifying the first and the second call, okay, of those races. I left this 5 furlong race out because, again, I could use 5.5, 6.5, and 6.5, which is closer to 6 furlongs than 5 furlongs. So I use these 3 races, and I'll tell you what we're going to do with them in a second. Now, for number 2, you noticed I left the 5 furlong out. I used the 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, and I highlighted, again, the first call and the second call. And I did the same for all the runners in the race. Now, the reason I highlighted them was so I could show you. But when I was doing this today, I wasn't even highlighting. I was just kind of doing the math in my head. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to add up the lengths behind for all 3 of them. All 3 of these races at the first call and second call. So I'm going to go 5 and 4 is 9. I'll do the whole numbers first. 5 and 4 is 9. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Nothing here because he was in the lead. 15 and a quarter. We did 3 races. I'm going to divide that 15 and a quarter by 3 to get the average. And the average is a 5.08. Now let me show you my grid for a second for Woodbine number 1. I put that average in there of a 5.08. Now I move on and I do the same thing for all the other runners. So the second horse is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.25. When I average 7.25 by 3 races, I don't have to do it. It's already on here. I get a 2.42. And so on, okay? So if you need to pause or go back and see exactly what I did, I'm not going to go over every runner there, but this is what we came out with. And I'll put it in bold so you can see it a little bit better. This is what we came out with, okay? And what's this telling us? This is telling us each of these horses, on the average, in the last 3 races that we used, where they were in regards to length off the pace, okay, off the front. 5.08 lengths. So these points are actually lengths. 2.42, 3.92, 1 length, 4.5, 9. So now what you can do is by looking at this picture, you could already determine who is your early runners. You don't need to have the running style that Brisnet gives you. Okay, the E, the EP, the P, and the S. Okay. Now what I do was, and these may change. Okay, I'm still playing around with this idea. Okay, but right now what I did was I made 0 to 2.5 lengths a true E runner. And then I went 2.6 to 6 a presser, somewhere close to the pace or close to the middle of the pack. 6.01 to 9 was toward the back of the middle or late. And a 9.01 or higher was a true late runner. Excuse me for a second. Sorry, guys, I had a phone call. All right, back to what I was saying. So, I'm identifying the runners based on using these lengths right now. Okay, this may change. Okay, but the way I look at it is it's all relative. As long as I'm using the same for everyone, it should make sense. But anyways, let's take a look now at the next step that I'm doing. Now, after I have this done, I'm identifying each horse by the color code here that I have. So any horse that falls in from a 0 to a 2.5 is getting the red as a true E. So right now that's painting a picture, is telling me there could possibly be a speed duel here between the 2 and the 4. Okay? And the more red you have in the race, the more you want to fade that early speed and look elsewhere. Now, let's take a look on where I'm looking elsewhere, and there's different ways that, depending on the race, some races are going to be stumpers. You're going to find like there's no clear horse or two that stand out because there's such a general mix, or there's outliers in the race that skew the averages, and I'll show you when I get to that one of them races. But if we look at here, we have the race average, okay, is 4.32 lengths off the lead. Okay, what is that telling you? I don't know. It could be telling you nothing. But I'm looking at it as it's telling you, even though there's only 6 horses, the cluster will be somewhere around 4.32 lengths off the lead. You'll have your early runners, you'll have these 3 together, and you'll have this one approximately 4 lengths behind the 1 horse. So what we're doing is we're putting together a race shape. Now, what am I doing as far as my contenders? I'm trying to stay away from the average as much as possible. Now, this is where other things come into play. Suppose the horse that's closest to the average is 4.5 here, is actually dropping down 3 classes in the race, and he's coming off a move on the turn, and he's got all these other factors going for him. You may be overlooking a horse that's going to win the race. Well, you know what? You can get beat 1,000 different ways anyway. But that's why I was saying this may not be a standalone method, at least right now at the time. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put together something where if you're pressed for time, there's certain things you can leave out, such as the factors that we're using in thorough capping, and just kind of put together something quick. And as I said before, I had a great day today using this, but I don't want to use the time right now to go over all the winners I had. I had a couple superfectas today. I had a few double-digit winners, solely using this method here. And I was posting in the Discord. So those of you that are in the Discord, you guys can vouch for me. And if you're not in the Discord, you guys, I'm going to throw a fresh link in the description for you guys to join. Now let's take a look at this and how I analyze this race. Being there's only 6 horses, okay, I went with the 2, 4, and the 6, and I'm gonna tell you why. There's gonna be a speed duel up front between the 4 and the 2, okay, but there's only 6 horses. I wanted to use the one outlier, the 6, okay, the one horse that's in the one category by himself, okay. Not saying he's gonna win the race, but we're looking for in the money as well. I went with the 4 and I went with the 2 just because there's going to be the battle up front. And if I was going to go 4 deep in this race, I would go with the one that's furthest away, that's left here, that's furthest away for this 4.32, and that would be the 1 horse. But, I mean, I'm not playing any type of exotic with 4 horses in a 6-horse field. Okay, unless I went with a single, like the 6 over top of the 1, 2, 4, over the 1, 2, 4 for a try or something. Okay, but as you're going to see, each race presents a unique scenario. Okay, we look at the race number 2, and you'll see how I see my points now. I already showed you how I got them. The race average here shows the cluster again, also in a press, right around the same area as race number 1. Okay, right in the middle of that pack. We have one true E horse in this race. It's a 1.5. Okay. So I'm definitely going to use this horse. Okay. If this horse goes alone on the lead, this horse could be a winner. And I'm not looking at odds and morning line odds, even though they're there. I'm not even worried about them. I'm trying to be as true as I can to these factors and these methods right here. So I got the 2 horse on top. Now let's see where I go after that. We have a lot of horses that fall into the same category as the race average. So I'm going to try to stay away from them, and I'm going to throw the 2 mid to late runners in there as well. So I got the 2 as the lone on the lead. I got the 4 and the 9. And now I want to go with the one that's furthest away from the cluster. Let's just call it a cluster. And that would be the 6 at 2.67. So my plays in that race would be 2, 4, 6, 8. And how I use them, again, would be determined by the value I'm getting, if I'm going to play them to win, or so on. Okay? And there's nothing that says you have to use a method that bullseye puts you on 1 horse. Okay? The more you push yourself to try to do that, the tougher you are, and the tougher it is, and the tougher of a day you're going to have. Okay? Let's look at number 3. Let me pause for a second. All right, guys. Again, sorry for the interruption there. Now, let's look at number 3. Woodbine third. We have no true E runner here. Okay, we have a couple horses that look like they will inherit the lead or go after the lead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this as also as a speed duel. So in a sense, in my head, what I'm doing is I'm turning these 2 into the horse on top, and I'm assuming that there's going to be a speed duel between these 2. This race falls into the race average falls into the mid to late category. So we're looking at the 4, 5, and the 6 as the mid to late runners, and the 2 and the 3 as the pressers. Now what I did was I came up with the 3, 4, 5, and the 6 in this race, and I'm going to just show you my logic here as to why. It's a 7-horse field, so if I were to play a superfecta, I'd probably include all 7 of them in there somewhere. Maybe 2 horses on top, 4 in second, 5 in third, and an all in fourth. And even for 20 cents, you're only looking at about $11 on that play. But at the same time, I'm eliminating the 1 and the 7 as far as win goes. Okay. So again, what I'm doing over here is I'm identifying who I think have a shot at winning, and then when I look at the odds, I'm going to decide the value out of them 4 and decide what to play. Doesn't mean I would not include one of the 2 potential speed horses in an exotic, but we're looking for win here. And what I'm doing is I'm looking to stay away from the average as best I can. Okay, and I know that the 3 and the 3.25 out of all of these, with the exception of the 4, are the furthest away from that average. But at the same time, I'm taking into account the potential speed duel going on possibly between these 2. So that's where I stayed with the 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, if I was going to replace one of them, it would probably be the 3. And I would replace that with one of my 2 speed horses. And that's why using some other factors and not just using this as a standalone might help you separate which of those 2 would you use. You know, you may look at class. You may look at actual times. You may look back in the past to see if any of these 2 were ever on the lead and make that your 4th choice. Okay, but right now I'm just going to leave this as a 4, 5, and 6. Really, I'm not doing this video as a to tout my selections. I'm really doing this video to kind of show you this method and also different ways to analyze the grid when it's done. Now let's look at race number 4. Race number 4, when it's all said and done, comes out to a 4.75 race average, with 2 horses falling into the E category. So again, potential speed duel. I did include the 8, the better of the 2 speed, even though it's not by much. I did include the 8 horse, just in case he does get out in the lead. I wanted to include one of them. The reason I didn't include both of them here is because these horses aren't necessarily showing that normally they're a true E horse. Today they just might happen, one of them might happen to inherit the lead. But let's take a look here. We have a 4.75. We have 3 horses though that fall into the orange category. We also have 3 that fall into the yellow category, the mid to late pace. The reason why the average falls where it is simply because of the numbers are so close together. This is a tough race to analyze, and I'm not saying that using this method, I'm not saying you need to play every race. If you're using just this quick capping method here and you stumble upon something like this, it's not like you took 30 minutes to handicap the race and now you're going to pass. Like I said, it only took about 5 or 6 minutes. You might look at this and go, not interested, and move on. But what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the 1, 4, 6, and the 8. And the reason I'm looking at that is simply because of the 6 horse being the mid to late, furthest away, and the 8 horse, again, I want to include one of the 2 speed horses. The 4 being the second closest away from the race average, where the cluster may be. Even though these are in 2 different categories, color-wise, it doesn't mean they're not going to be bunched up. Okay, it doesn't mean they're not going to be bunched up. These numbers I'm using could be wrong, and that's why I said I may be changing these numbers down the road. This was a tough race, and that's pretty much what I came up with, 1, 4, 6, and 8. That might be a race that if I was rating the race as far as my confidence level, it might be a 1 star. Race number 5. Let's see if we can find another unique race. Here we go. We have a race here with a lone E, 2.5. We do have a couple 2.97s. So this 3 horse may be pressed for the lead. But at the same time, this 3 horse may not win the race. But we do have a couple standouts here that are oddballs on the grid. And that's the 8, or that's the 6 horse, which falls in the mid to late category. And that's the 1 horse that falls into late. The rest of them all fall in that presser category between the 1.6 and the 6, which means that's where that cluster could be. Anywhere from 2.9 lengths off the lead all the way to 5.5, there could be a little bit of a cluster, and the 7 is the furthest away from them in that cluster, the furthest away from that average that's closest to the back of the pack, and that's why I included the 7, even though the 7 is an orange. So I went with the 1, 3, 6, and the 7. The only change I would make potentially would be the taking the 7 instead of using the 7, using the 3. Because again, the 3 is, or no, I'm sorry, the 5. Let me go to 5, and I'll explain why. I want to stay away from this potential speed duel. Okay, I don't want to use the 4 or the 2, because if they all go after each other, they all may be dead by the top of the stretch or mid stretch. Now I want to find something that's furthest away from the crowd, let's say, or the bunch up. and that would be the 6. That would be the 1. I included the 3, like I said, for spoils. Maybe if he hangs on and finishes in a try. And then it would be the 3.75 or the 5.58 that I had highlighted before. Okay. Race number 6. We have another Loney, the 7 horse, falls 2.25. We don't have anybody within a point of him. Okay, so that's the other thing I'm looking for. When I have my lowest point getter, even if it's a 3 or 3.5, if I had a 3.5 as my lowest and the next highest was a 4.6, I'm still going to consider that horse today a Loney. He's going to go after the lead and potentially could be sitting on front alone. But in this case, we have the 7 horse at a 2.25, so he's a definite in. Okay, we have the cluster going to be, again, in the pressing category. We have a 3.92, 3.33, 4.83, 4.33, 4.33. Again, assuming that my numbers are somewhat accurate. And then we have the standout, which is the 9.92, 7.58, 7.67. Now, what I did was, the reason I left this 4 out at the time, and I analyzed this grid probably about 45 minutes ago. So what was going through my mind then isn't necessarily going through my mind now, especially because I'm still trying to get my feet wet with these methods. But I included the 2 horses that were outside of this category, which is 7.458, 7.67. And then I had to decide, either use the 4, which was the furthest away from on the high side of the average, or the 3.33, who was the furthest away on the low side of the average. And that's why I went with the 3.33. I just thought maybe this 4 horse would just be too far in the back, but who knows, I could be wrong. The 7th race I skipped. It was 1.5 miles, and it was just, I mean, it wasn't like I couldn't do it, but I was kind of wanted to stick with the just your normal races. I didn't want to do a marathon race. Race number 8, you can see we have a potential speed duel, 2 true E's. Here's another interesting situation. Sorry, and it's because of the outliers in this race. The low end and the high end averages this race out to a 5.65. However, in that category, there's only 1 horse that falls in that category, in between the 2.6 and the 6, where that average would be. The cluster actually looks like it's going to be toward the back of the pack, mid-back of the pack, mid to late. Okay, these 2 categories here could pretty much potentially be one category, but just one's a different shade because it's a little bit deeper in the pack. Okay, and then you have your back at all the way in the back. There could be separation there, but let's take a look how I analyzed it. I took into account the speed duel, potential speed duel. However, I did include the top speed horse, which was the 2. I included the 4 horse. I included the 5 horse, and then I wanted to go with one of the horses that was furthest away from this average, which was the 7.33, who was the closest to actually being in the late pace out of these 3. Okay, and then finally in the 9th race, we have 3 horses. Okay, and the rule of thumb is when we have 3 horses that are this close in early speed, there could be a pace meltdown. And I did include one. I did include the one with the top speed to maybe burn these 2 out, but then finish in the money somewhere. Well, here's another example. 5.6 is the average, but yet the cluster is falling after that. And again, the reason why is because we have 3 low numbers, and we have the one 11.17. When you average it out, the outliers, if I were to take them outliers out of there, you'd see more of you'd see a different number there. The picture would be a little bit different. But what I did was I'm not necessarily looking at here, I'm looking at the colors. finding out where the cluster is going to be, and I'm working around it. And I went with the 1, who is alone in his category. I went with the 7, because he's the highest in that cluster away from this average. I went with the 8, again, because early speed. And I went with 11, because the 11 is also the outside of the 10. The 11 is actually the furthest away from this average as well. So I apologize if I was stumbling over my words. I did not script this. I still don't have a complete grip on it, on how I want to use it and what I want to add to it. I'm thinking the velocity grids might go along very well with it. But as I said, today was a very good day using it as a standalone to really paint a picture, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So please, I'm welcoming your comments, your thoughts. This could be total garbage for all I know, but something tells me that there's some validity to it. All right. So tomorrow I'll do a review and see how we do. And I'm welcoming any comments, any suggestions that may help us tweak this a little bit. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon.